we are the official advisors on climate targets to government. We put out a big report in February this year advising on the UK's 7th carbon budget, which covers the period 2038 to 2042. That's a legally binding cap on greenhouse gas emissions over a 5-year period in the UK. So we have these carbon budgets, and I'll go to the next slide, which shows this, which are our stepping stones to net zero. So we have a net zero target by 2050, and we have these legally binding caps on greenhouse gas emissions. There's a lot in this chart here, and I'll just try to pull out the key things. Grey line there is the UK's territorial emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. What you can see is from 1990 to 2024, those have halved in the UK. That is impressive progress. All of the carbon budgets so far, the orange ones, have been achieved, and the pace of emissions reduction since they started, since the introduction of the Climate Change Act, has more than doubled. So we have seen a lot of progress. Going forwards, the right-hand side is what we call our balanced pathway to get to net zero. That's the purple line. That goes through all the sort of future legally binding targets, and then our advice is on that 7th carbon budget. So our next target that is in line with net zero, in fact, it's the first target in line with net zero, is the 2030 NDC, which is a 68% reduction in emissions since 1990. That's around 2/3 of emissions today. And then by 2035, we need to be at an 81% reduction. So we do need to really continue this good progress. And what we have shown is this pathway is predominantly driven by a transition to better, more modern, more efficient technologies, leading to cleaner air and lower running costs for consumers. Let's have a look at this by sector. So how have emissions reduced by sector of the economy? In bright yellow there is electricity supply. That's always been the one we've talked about the most. We had very high emissions for electricity supply traditionally. Until about 10 years ago, it was the leading sector. It's now the 6th highest emitting sector because we've had a lot of success in reducing emissions from electricity supply, which I'm sure Claire will talk about too. We've phased out the generation of coal to produce electricity. We've ramped up renewables, and we've reduced how much gas we use to produce electricity too. We need to continue with that. There's a target in 2030 to have clean power, but we've had a lot of progress. This means we need to shift our focus to other sectors. Currently, the highest emitting sector in the UK by far is surface transport, but next, after that is residential buildings, and that's shown here. I've highlighted the red line there and faded out the others. It's the 2nd highest emitting sector in the UK. This is direct emissions from burning fossil fuels. It's not including the embodied emissions, which are included partly as imports, but also in our industry sector. We've seen some reductions. We've seen some emissions reductions in efficiency improvements, but we have not yet seen deep decarbonisation in how we heat our buildings. That's what we need to see next. This shows industry emissions. I won't get into that. That's the 3rd highest emitting sector. This is where we see the sort of embodied emissions in building new homes from concrete, steel, glass, bricks, etc. We also need to see deep decarbonisation in that. It's really good to see the new home sector net zero transition plan that Ed highlighted, which is highlighting we need to look at all these emissions, embodied and direct from burning fossil fuels. I'm going to focus on the burning fossil fuels side. This chart here shows the grey is what I showed before in red, which is emissions from residential buildings in the UK. There has been some reductions. In recent years, emissions fell quite a bit, and that's due to higher gas prices and warmer temperatures in the winter. So we are expecting some of that to come back up. So what this chart here shows then going forward, the dashed line is what we call our baseline emissions. What would emissions be if we just stopped decarbonising and we carried on building new homes with gas central heating? As we build more homes, those emissions would increase. That is not what we want to see. We don't want to see an increase. Our pathway is what we want to see. That's the solid line there. And what we see there by 2040, 2/3 of existing homes will have low carbon heat. And half our homes will be heated with a heat pump. So really the majority of our emissions reductions is shown there in orange. That's in existing homes where we shift how we heat our homes. We shift mostly to heat pumps, but it's electrification. It's a much more efficient system. There are in the purple colours the fabric efficiency and also changing behaviours in homes. So you do have savings there, but you can't get the whole way with that. You have to shift to low carbon heating. And I really want to point out the yellow block there. So that's the savings you get in new homes. So that's singling out new homes, shifting to electric heating in new homes, to heat pumps. Heat pumps are great. I'll come to those in a minute. So that's what we're getting if we shift to building new homes with low carbon heat instead of gas boilers. So let's have a look at heat pumps. It's all about installing electric heating homes, and particularly heat pumps. At the moment, only 1% of homes in the UK are heated with a heat pump. That's amongst the lowest in Europe. But there has been a growth in the installations of heat pumps in the UK. And in 2024, we saw a 56% increase in heat pump installations. That's shown in sort of the uptick there. You can see in the sort of stacked chart on the left. The hashed bit there, that's new homes. The rest of it is existing homes where we have government-funded schemes as well as other installations. But actually, the growth that we saw, the 56%, was similar in existing homes to new homes. And actually, 71% of new homes were built with fossil fuel heating in 2024. That's a big number. And I think only around 13% with a heat pump. So there were other types of electric heating. We really need to see that change fast. We are waiting for building regulations, future home standard, of course, but really if one thing we can come out of this conference today is, can we build more homes with electric heat pumps? We have a good technology. It's ready. And every single one of these homes, as Sam pointed out, these will last a long time, will need to be retrofitted with low carbon heating if they're built with fossil fuel heating today, next year. So this is really key. We really need to do that as soon as possible. We see a very rapid ramp up in heat pump installations, that purple line there, reaching 450,000 by 2030 and 1.5 million, which is basically the stock turnover in existing homes by 2035. We're assuming they're a 15-year lifetime. The Carbon Budget Delivery and Growth Plan that came out recently from the government has a very similar trajectory, but really what we need to see is the Warm Homes Plan to tell us how that's going to happen. What are the incentives? And number one for that, as Evan's already pointed out, is getting the incentives right on electricity bills. We currently put our policy costs on electricity bills much more than gas. That's not getting the incentives right for people to switch to low carbon heating. Thank you very much.